It's done. Go. I hope everyone is doing well. Today my video is going to be about how to use the patchwork on a hoodie. Some of the things that you're going to need, of course, is your hoodie and your patchwork, an edging material or fabric. I'm going to be using this gross grain ribbon. Maybe that's how you pronounce that. I'm going to be using yellow rickrack. You'll need scissors, maybe some nippers, maybe some pins. Not quite sure. Always good to have your seam ripper handy, and of course your sewing machine. So let's get started. The first step is going to be cutting a length of patchwork to fit the hoodie. And when I say fit it, what I mean is it needs to be longer than the section of where you plan for it to sit when it is completed. So as you can see, this extends past the sleeve seam on both sides. That is step one. So when you get that cut out, selected, come back and we'll continue. So your next step is going to be pinning your edging onto your patchwork. Now I did this while this was still attached to the spool. I just kind of pushed that aside and I pinned it down. And you want to pin as close to the edge of that square as you can get. Now some of these squares, believe it or not, are not all the same size. One of these in particular is smaller. I believe it is this one, and I had to take up more room, and you can see here on this one I had to take up more of the square. But on the main ones that are going to be showing on the hoodie, you want to get just the very scarcest amount that you can get. Now you can turn it over and you can see where the pins are. That will be your seam line when you sew this on. So when you take it to your machine and start stitching, you're going to want to stitch as close to the edge as you can get. Then after you stitch this on, you'll repeat on the bottom side. So let's get to stitching. Okay, I've got this under. This is Silas, by the way. I love this machine. I should have, if I had been using some patchwork as an example, I would have chosen a contrasting thread so you guys could see. But this is actually for a project that I have going to a friend of mine in Oklahoma. And you can see there how, I'm just going to lift this up so you can see how close I am stitching to the edge. And that's how close you want to stitch, if at all possible. You want to stitch as close to the edge of that edging as you can possibly get. You may have to stitch slow, but you know, that is the way I do it. So just stitch down your edging, go back and pin the bottom side, and repeat. Okay, before you actually pin the bottom side, you may want to go back and double check what you've done and make sure that you have caught, you can see it's really tight right there, but make sure that you caught all of your edging. Now right here you can see this is really close. I am not going to worry about that because this is the edge of the patchwork. This is going to be cut and folded under. This is going on the side of the sleeve, but you can see I caught it there. I'll show you. This was the first one that I worked on, and you can see that it's really scarce, but it's all caught. until I got here. And here at this section, although it was caught in the seam, it wasn't enough, and when I tested it by pulling on it, it ripped out. And I tried to fix it. I got discouraged, and I was like, you know, I'm just gonna cut out another length to go on this hoodie and do that instead of trying to fix this. I just thought it would end up with a better result if I started over instead of trying to fix this. I can always use this piece on something else, maybe in a quilt, maybe, I don't know. You wouldn't believe all of the patchwork that I have saved from previous projects that is just waiting to be used on something else, and that's where it all goes. Some of this is really old, some of this is fairly new. The older pieces are down in the bottom, and that's when I first started making patchwork in there. It's not really matched up really well. The seams are off. It's even, it's uneven, it's crooked. I probably won't use it on anything, but it's there in case I decide to. So back over here, all of this is good. I'm going to test it. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to pull it, and I'm going to test it and make sure that it's good, and then I'll go down to the bottom side. Okay, I've got the top and the bottom sewn on. They have both, I've pulled on both of them, both sides. Both sides have passed the stress test. You can see the seam there and there. The next step is to sew on the rickrack. This is the rickrack that I've chosen, and I'm just going to sew this. Just going to do 4 rows of rickrack, 2 on the inside and 2 on the outside, or 1 on the outside on each one. Anyway, you get it, you understand. So a lot of people don't like to use this little baby rickrack. But I'll share with you a tip that my mother-in-law taught me. Okay, we are back at the sewing machine, and I have my rickrack set up here. I'm using a spool of rickrack, and I just use a wooden spoon there in the center that just kind of helps it stay where it's supposed to. Pull off a length. I'm only using one hand, so now right there, when you get this rickrack by the spool, you have to watch for these little spots right here. You don't want to sew that up into your work and mess up your color scheme. So just keep that in mind if you order rickrack by the spool. So the next thing is you're going to come over to your sewing machine. I'm going to have to set the camera down so that I can get this set up, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, it's set up. I've already changed the thread color. I'm going to use yellow because I'm using yellow rickrack. And the trick to doing this, well, first off, let me say I always start on the inside. I just feel that reinforces your straight stitch that you put on there, and just gives it a little more security of not coming loose. So this is going to go on the inside. I have the yellow thread to match the rickrack. I have set my machine, of course this is a antique machine, but I've set it to zigzag, and that's what you want to do. You want to zigzag this rickrack on. That way you don't have to worry about running a straight stitch down the middle of that rickrack, which is what so many people do. But my mother-in-law taught me this little trick, and my, it just works wonders. See if I can do this one-handed and watch what I'm doing. I'm not so sure I can. But you want to sew that rickrack as close to the edge as possible. Can you guys see? And if you zigzag it, that zigzag stitch will kind of blend in with your rickrack. You won't really see it, but it gives you just a little extra reinforcement for your rickrack. And it will also help your rickrack to lay down. You know how sometimes rickrack folds over? That folds over because it's sewn with a straight stitch down the middle, and it leaves those these loose so that they are prone to folding over. And that is how I sew on the baby rickrack. I will put this on the inside of this side. Then I'll go back and do this side. So let me finish that up and we'll come back. There you go. The inside of both the top and the bottom are now rickracked. And we'll flip it over so you can see what that looks like. And you can see here that just reinforces the straight stitch and here. And again, you're going to want to get that as close to the edge as you can. As close to this edge as you can. But you have to leave, you know, you still have to leave room for the needle to catch. So we'll do that next. Okay, I'm sewing along, and after I was telling you guys to watch, if you use spooled rickrack, to watch for those little spaces of off-colored thread, I missed it. And I was sewing this down, and I saw that I came up on this. Now, you know, it's on the wrong side, but you can still see that. So I'm going to have to stop and pick that out. Like I said earlier, having your seam ripper handy is always a good idea. Seam rippers are so useful. So I'm going to have to pick that out, very carefully pick that out, and then I will continue sewing that down. So if you use spooled rickrack, be sure and watch for that. Okay, I've taken that out. So the next thing I've got to do is I've got to go back, probably start about right here. I'll do a back stitch and then just continue sewing. And I have checked this time and there is no more discoloration or extra thread. This goes on the bottom, so that's not a problem. Okay. Okay, it's all sewn on. All the rickrack is sewn on. This, of course, is the back side. You can see here, these are the seams for the outside part of the edging. This is the little part where I found the discoloration and had to pick it out. The next thing, you want to make sure that none of these little edges are sticking up over the top of your edging. Like this right here needs to be trimmed off. It's not quite over the top, but I just want to make sure. There's nothing worse than getting your patchwork piece sewn down and seeing that these little thingies are sticking up over the edge. Generally, what I do is I cut them all off, whether they're sticking up over the edge or not. So that's what I'm going to do next. The next step is placement and pinning of your patchwork strip onto the hoodie. First, let's clean this off just with the lint roller. Clean off all those little leftover pieces of thread. Now, you want to put your patchwork down where you want it. Make sure that you have extra that's coming across the sleeve seam on both sides. Then get it straight. as straight as you can get it. And one thing you have to remember is that hoodies are made out of this stretchy jersey fabric, and it will slide and move, and like even in manufacturing you can see that these aren't necessarily quite even up here on the neck. A lot of times what I will do is I'll take the hoodie and I'll even it up with the edge of my table, and then even then you can see that the shoulders aren't exactly even up here, even though the bottom is straight with the table. So keep that in mind and know that these things aren't going to go together exactly perfect, but you can get them as close to perfect as you can. So that's where I want that to lay, and you can see that I have some coming across the edge of this sleeve seam, and also on this one. So I'm going to pin this down, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pin through both layers of this hoodie, and then I'll show you what we'll do next. Okay, I've pinned it down. As I stated, I pinned all the way through both layers, so you can see the pins here on the back. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right in the center, right where that zipper is. I'm just going to cut it in half. And after I get it cut in half, I'll fold those edges under and pin them down. Okay, I cut that in half, and then I folded those under and pinned them down. My next step is I'm going to fold under this edge, and it's going to have to be folded under up to here. I may try to fold this on a curve to follow that, but if not, it'll just be straight down this way. We'll see what happens. I went with the straight fold. The Patchwork didn't want to play well doing the curve. It wanted to leave too much hanging out on the fold. Like sometimes when you fold this, there'll be a little edge that wants to hang out, and that's what happened there. And if I tried to force it up under the Patchwork, it became too bulky and it just didn't look nice. Now I'll tell you why we pinned everything all the way through both layers. Is because I like for this to match, be as straight across here as I can get it. And if I do one side at a time, it doesn't always come out even here. I have found that pinning one piece down all the way through and then making these folds helps for these to match. But I can't sew it like that. So what's going to happen now is this side is going to stay pinned down all the way through both layers. I'm going to unzip the hoodie, and then I'm going to go through and unpin and repin, and then I can take it to the sewing machine and sew. By pinning it through both layers, it just helps it to stay in place, gives it more stability while you're working with it. And something else is when I am unpinning these, I don't pull the pin all the way out. I just kind of pull it to where it is out and gives me a little place to put my hand, and then I will stick the pin back in to try to get it the back same spot that it was. Okay, it's been unpinned and repinned. This side is still pinned all the way through both layers. And I am now ready to take this to the machine and stitch this down. And what I will do I'm still using the yellow thread on top. I'm going to switch to a bobbin thread that's going to match this, so white. And I am going to straight stitch right down the yellow portion of the rickrack, right in the middle, like people don't like to do on this baby rickrack. I'm going to do both. I'm going to do all four lines of rickrack, and then I'm going to come back and do down the sides. And I'm going to start with the center rickrack. I'll do this, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. And I feel that this keeps the hoodie from bulking and bucking up after it's been worn and washed a few times. I think that just helps to stabilize it if you sew these inner pieces first, these inner lines first. And also when you sew jersey and knit type fabric, if you decide to put this on a t-shirt, you will want to make a longer stitch. Don't make a short stitch like you do when you're sewing your cottons or when you're making your patchwork. You're going to want a longer stitch, not a basting length stitch, but a longer stitch, and it will help you to sew this onto these jersey and knit type fabrics. Okay, I've gotten the inside seams sewn down, the outside seams sewn down, the sleeve seam side sewn down. Now I have to sew down this by the zipper. And just wanted to let you know that you may find it helpful to switch to your zipper foot to do this. It may help you get in just a little closer on this edge. Okay, we've got this one side sewn completely down. We use the white bobbin that makes it look nice on the inside. My sewing machine repair guy does not like for me to do that. He likes for me to use a bobbin wound from the same thread that I'm sewing with, and I told him with what I make, that's just not possible. But that's this side sewn down. Now we're just going to repeat the process over here. But before we do that, I'm going to zip the jacket back up. It just helps, again, to reinforce what you're doing on this side. It just stabilizes it. Okay, the hoodie is zipped up. You can see that these sides match pretty well. This looks like it took a little turn here. Again, that has nothing to do with anything except for the type of fabric it is that you're sewing on. This stretchy stuff is not friendly to sew on. Doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means it's not friendly to do it. So now we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to fold this under, unpin this, fold this under, make sure there's nothing sticking out on the bottom, pin it down, unzip, unpin, repin, sew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 with the zipper foot. Just wanted to take a second to show you here where I folded that edge under. You can see that this is sticking out right here. The top looks good. There's nothing, it folded under even. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unpin this, and I'm going to trim this probably at an angle, or I may just unpin both sides and go through and trim the whole thing and make it shorter so that that doesn't stick out. But if you can, try not to have any edges such as that sticking out. I just refolded that. I was able to fold it so that it wasn't showing. This is now pinned singly to this side, and it's ready to go to the sewing machine and get sewn down. And there you have your completed hoodie. That's how you apply your patchwork to garments. That's pretty much how I apply patchwork to anything I make. I sew it directly onto the garment instead of slicing the garment and using it for the edging. A lot of people do it that way, and that's whichever way is fine. So that's done. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to. We'll do some more things like this. If you've got questions, please put them in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. If you've got request something that you want to see done, I can try to do that as well. I hope you all have a good day. Mado.